We observe them everywhere, two distinct categories of men sharing the same chronological age, yet existing across different epochs of vitality. One stands, rigid and weathered, carrying the unmistakable physical sediment of continuous burden. The lines etched into his face are not merely wrinkles. They are chronicles of stress, exhaustion, and chronic compromise. His eyes possess a deep, almost weary resignation, the look of a man whose inner resources have been continuously mortgaged. The second man, however, appears to defy linear time. He moves with a lightness, a certain retained boyishness. His focus is sharp, his intellectual curiosity seems preserved, and while he is undeniably mature, he lacks the profound, existential weariness that defines the other. We spend untold hours searching for the root of this divergence, blaming genetics, attributing it to luck, or perhaps the quality of their careers. We look at diet, exercise, and climate, but one of the most intellectually uncompromising and strategically pessimistic minds in history, Arthur Schopenhauer, dismissed all these superficial explanations. He identified the single radical decision that determines whether a man accelerates toward decay or maintains a reservoir of vital energy well into later life. That decision is not about wealth, genetics, or even vocation. It is about whether he submits to the great biological conspiracy of the will or maintains his strategic independence. It is the question of whether he remains single or chooses to marry. Schopenhauer's foundational philosophy is the perfect lens through which to dissect the economics of male aging. Life, he argued, is a relentless oscillation between wanting and achieving, a cycle defined by suffering. The underlying engine of this suffering is the will to live, a blind, insatiable, impersonal force that uses every creature merely as a tool for its own perpetuation. For a man, submitting to the institution of marriage is the ultimate, definitive surrender to this will. It is the moment the individual ceases to be a self-directed entity, focused on intellectual or solitary pursuits, and instead becomes a slave, laboring solely for the propagation and comfort of the species. This servitude, the continuous draining of vital energy, is precisely what accelerates the aging process. The single man, by refusing this ultimate contract, maintains a critical distance from the crushing demands of the will, preserving his energy and effectively slowing his existential clock. This profound journey into the psychology of aging and freedom requires us to consider our own surroundings and the environments that shape us. Tell us immediately, where are you tuning in from? What city are you observing this universal human phenomenon from right now? Now, let us delve into the mechanics of this accelerated decay. The core burden of married life, particularly for the man, is the radical shift from the simplicity of individual existence to the agonizing complexity of the domestic machine. Schopenhauer valued attainable tranquility above all other human goods. Tranquility is the absence of agitation, the stillness necessary for philosophical thought, and the environment required for the preservation of mental clarity. The single man owns his quiet. Yao. His space is his sanctuary. His time is his own command. If he seeks solitude, it is granted instantly. If he wishes to pursue an abstract thought for hours without interruption, the path is clear. This quiet command over one's environment is not a luxury. It is the most potent form of energy conservation. Contrast this with the married man. He is instantly thrust into a state of perpetual logistical and emotional management. He becomes the central node in a complex network of obligations, needs, and demands that are ceaseless. The marriage requires constant maintenance. The home requires constant repair. And above all, the relationship itself necessitates continuous emotional labor, a form of expenditure that is rarely visible but intensely draining. Schopenhauer understood that the real drain on a man's vitality is not hard physical work, but the constant stream of petty vexations and unavoidable friction inherent in cohabitation. The ceaseless negotiations over small matters, the unavoidable conflicts of incompatible temperaments, the necessary compromises that erode personal taste and preference. These are the thousand small cuts that bleed the soul of its energy. Every argument, every minor domestic drama, Every decision about schedules or finances is an energy expense deducted directly from the man's reservoir of vitality. This chronic, low-level stress, what we might call existential friction, forces the man's system into a state of perpetual alert, accelerating the oxidation of his patience and the eventual decline of his physical appearance. The married man ages faster because he is fighting a continuous, undeclared war in his own living room. The single man, meanwhile, is able to strategically deploy his stress. He chooses his battles. His environment is designed for his peace. When he closes his door, he achieves genuine sanctuary. This solitude is not merely the absence of people. It is the presence of unadulterated self-ownership. This preservation of internal peace means his nervous system is not constantly besieged. The consequence is a demonstrable slowing of the physical and psychological toll of life. Furthermore, the aging process is profoundly tied to the loss of intellectual focus. Schopenhauer posited that the highest form of human existence is contemplation, the transcendence of the will through intellectual endeavor, art, or philosophy. The single life is inherently structured to facilitate this transcendence. The energy not spent on domestic upkeep, emotional appeasement, and financial planning for dependence is automatically redirected inward, fueling the mind. The single man can afford to keep his mind sharp on abstract problems, on subjects of profound complexity, or on personal creative expression. This continuous exercise of the higher faculties preserves intellectual youth. The mind that is actively engaged in self-chosen, challenging pursuits resists stagnation. The married man, conversely, finds his intellectual energy relentlessly redirected toward the mundane and the practical. His mental bandwidth is consumed by bills, mortgages, school forms, and the endless minutiae of shared existence. His focus is pulled outwards, on away from contemplation and toward action. His mental life becomes a spreadsheet of duties rather than a laboratory of ideas. When the highest faculties are neglected in favor of the immediate demands of domesticity, the spirit begins to atrophy. This atrophy, this intellectual stagnation, registers physically as accelerated aging, a dulling of the eyes, a slump in the posture, the unmistakable air of a man whose dreams were exchanged for duties. It is a terrible irony that the societal pressure to achieve completeness through marriage leads directly to the dissolution of the self. The single man preserves his identity as a strategic resource. He is free to cultivate his eccentricity, his unique rhythm, and his personal goals without needing to flatten himself into a shape acceptable for shared domestic harmony. Every marriage, by necessity, demands a reduction of the individual's sharp edges. It requires a smoothing over of individuality for the sake of union. This constant self-editing, this enforced compromise, is an exhausting psychological task. The single man experiences freedom not as license, but as efficiency. He is the master of his resources. His money, his time, and his intellectual capital are deployed strategically for his own development or his chosen goals. He builds his life as an intellectual fortress, designed for maximum resilience against the chaos of existence. The married man, however, must build his life as a shared utility, structurally weaker because its integrity depends on too often conflicting wills, and functionally inefficient due to the duplicated and compounded complexity of two intertwined lives. When Schopenhauer speaks of the burden of marriage, he is not merely referring to the cost of groceries or the weight of having children. He speaks of the continuous, unyielding pressure to maintain a social facade of contentment and stability. This performance, required to assure the spouse, the family, and society, burns precious emotional fuel. The single man is allowed the authenticity of his discontent. He is free to be moody, messy, or hermetic without accountability. The married man is always performing the role of the provider, the stable partner, the pillar. This emotional mask is heavy, and the effort required to keep it fixed in place is a massive drain on the system, manifesting inevitably as premature exhaustion. This initial foundation reveals the absolute truth, that the institution of marriage, and far from offering stability, is the primary accelerator of biological decay in men, because it forces an immediate, total surrender to the will to live, draining intellectual resources and extinguishing the precious inner peace required for slow, dignified aging. We have only scratched the surface of how this relentless wear and tear manifests. We must delve deeper into the specific mechanisms of financial servitude and the crushing societal expectations that follow the ring. You recognize this truth. You feel the weight of these demands. To lock in this powerful shift in perspective, affirm your understanding right now. Type this phrase into the comments below. Solitude is the preservation of genius. Your engagement fuels this mission to explore the deepest truths of power and existence. Join the ranks of those who seek genuine, uncomfortable insight. Subscribe immediately. Click that like button now to signal that you refuse to participate in the general illusion. And prepare your mind, because in the next segment, we will strip away the final romantic delusions, exposing exactly why the pursuit of happiness through union is the ultimate biological conspiracy against the aging man. Do not miss the next transmission. The philosophical hammer of Arthur Schopenhauer does not merely suggest a correlation between marital status and longevity. It posits a direct, causal, and devastating link. We have briefly touched upon the surface of this gloomy thesis, observing the fundamental conflict between the pursuit of intellectual peace and the biological servitude of matrimony. Now, we must descend into the precise mechanisms, the insidious architecture of domestic life that Schopenhauer claims is engineered, not for happiness or companionship, but for the relentless and accelerated consumption of the male spirit. But before we plunge further into this dark labyrinth of psychological and physical attrition, take a moment. If these dense explorations into the nature of power, freedom, and human misery resonate, we want to know where this conversation finds you. Tell us the city that hosts your current contemplation. Knowing where our audience resides underscores the shared, universal struggle against the tyranny of the mundane that Schopenhauer so vividly describes. The single man, by contrast, operates under a single, self-imposed gravity. His suffering, though often profound, is largely existential, the noble suffering of contemplation, nay, the intellectual pain of observing the world's folly. The married man, however, is immediately burdened with the tyranny of the concrete. Schopenhauer views this shift as the primary accelerator of aging. Once the vow is taken, the man ceases to be merely an individual striving for personal salvation through art or philosophy. He becomes, instantaneously, an economic unit, a generator of stability, a fortress against the external world for his family. This transition imposes a permanent psychological state of sorge, a profound, constant, soul-draining anxiety about material provision. This is not the occasional stress of ambition. It is the perpetual attrition of responsibility. The single man can tolerate professional failure, financial setback, or even ruin, knowing that his fundamental shelter, his solitude, and his freedom remains intact. He can pivot, retreat, and rebuild, unburdened by dependence. The married man cannot. His actions are no longer solely his own. They are mortgaged against the security of others. Every market downturn, every professional slight, every potential loss of income becomes a direct threat to the welfare of his wife and children. This constant requirement for vigilance, this unceasing computation of risk and provision, is what physically manifests as accelerated decay. Stress hormones flood the system relentlessly, suppressing the regenerative functions necessary for sustained vitality. Schopenhauer observed that the face of the single man, even in later years, often retains a look of contemplative detachment, a certain youthful freedom from the world's grip. The face of the married man, regardless of wealth or comfort, inevitably adopts the hardened lines of the sentinel, a weariness born from constantly standing guard over a life that is fundamentally unfree. He is perpetually calculating the next expenditure, the next school fee, the next necessary sacrifice of his own time, energy, and deepest desires. The energy that might have fueled intellectual pursuits or physical vigor is instead siphoned off daily to fuel the engine of maintenance. This is the invisible tax of commitment, paid not in currency, but in biological years. Furthermore, the environment necessary for true genius, or even merely for intellectual health, is systematically obliterated by the domestic sphere. Schopenhauer asserted that solitude is the cradle of genius. Only in sustained, uninterrupted silence can the intellect truly detach itself from the will and contemplate the pure forms of existence. Marriage, by its very nature, declares war on solitude. The home, once a sanctuary for thought, becomes a factory of triviality. The great problems of metaphysics are replaced by the minor logistics of the household, the endless chatter, the required social visits, the inevitable noise and distraction of children, the necessity of compromise and conversation. The philosopher must constantly lower his intellectual altitude to deal with the petty concerns of the moment. The sublime contemplation of eternal truths is exchanged for the exhausting management of temporal demands. This constant interruption does not just slow intellectual progress, it erodes the capacity for deep thought entirely. The mind, forced to attend to a continuous stream of minor stimuli and emotional demands, loses its ability to focus for prolonged periods. This fragmentation of attention, Schopenhauer suggests, is precisely what dulls the sharpness of the mind and, by extension, ages the individual. The single man can structure his day around his highest intellectual aim. The married man must structure his time around the lowest common denominator of domestic necessity. He sacrifices the grand architecture of his inner world for the messy reality of shared existence. It is a constant, subtle psychological violence. The intellectual man requires high-level engagement to maintain his vitality, but domestic life imposes a mandatory engagement with the painfully superficial. This forced interaction with the mundane creates a profound sense of ennui and frustration, a low-grade simmering resentment that is far more damaging than acute suffering. Acute suffering can inspire genius. Chronic triviality only breeds exhaustion. The single man, bored, can seek the sublime in nature or art. The married man, bored, must seek distraction in compromise or petty argument. This leads us to the metaphysical core of Schopenhauer's argument, the betrayal of the intellect by the will. Marriage is the ultimate trap set by the blind, biological urge, the will to live. The moment a man commits, he is no longer seeking liberation from the cycle of desire and suffering. He has actively volunteered to be its primary instrument. The single man, especially the philosophical man, and strives to elevate his intellect above the demands of the will. He seeks nirvana, tranquility through resignation and aesthetic detachment. The married man, conversely, accepts his role as a slave of the species, dedicating his resources and freedom to propagate the very suffering he ought to be philosophically attempting to escape. This capitulation to the will is costly. When the intellect is forced to serve mere biological function, reproduction, provision, it loses its inherent light. Schopenhauer believed that the most noble existence was characterized by the intellectual suppression of the will. When the intellect is instead mobilized to maximize the continuation of the will, that is, making money to feed children, the man has chosen the path of greater suffering. And suffering, in Schopenhauer's view, is the engine of aging. It drains the inherent Lebenskraft, life force. The single man, detached, views the world as spectacle. He can maintain a certain psychological distance from its painful realities. The married man is plunged directly into the arena, forced to participate in the ceaseless striving and subsequent disappointment that characterizes life under the yoke of the will. Consider the common man's conversation. The single man, conversing, may still discuss ideas, books, or observations. The married man's conversation is frequently centered on complaints, domestic logistics, professional maneuvers necessary for provision, and the inevitable anxieties of the future. His entire focus is earthbound, practical, and worried. This constant, low-frequency vibration of anxiety and material concern etches itself onto the physical being. It weighs down his step, clouds his eyes, and tightens his jaw. Schopenhauer believed that the natural, vital energy, that inherent spark that defines youth and intellectual curiosity, is finite. The single man conserves this energy, directing it inward toward contemplation and intellectual mastery, thus keeping the flame alive longer. The married man burns it rapidly, dissipating it through incessant negotiation, conflict resolution, emotional management, and the grinding stress of financial obligation. He prematurely exhausts his reserves. The married man, tied to the emotional barometer of his spouse and family, can never achieve the emotional stasis required for prolonged health. He is constantly reactive, responding to external crises both large and small. The single man, shielded by his self-sufficiency, maintains a far more predictable and stable emotional baseline. This steady state allows the body and mind to operate efficiently, minimizing the high energy demands of emotional turmoil. The result is not merely premature graying, but a deeper spiritual exhaustion. The single man often retains a playful element, a youthful elasticity because his decisions are reversible and his potential remains unfixed. The married man lives a life of fixed constraints. He is defined by his obligations, not his potential. This sense of finality, the knowledge that the great intellectual possibilities have been foreclosed in favor of comfortable necessity, is the heaviest burden of all, manifesting as a fundamental lack of joy or lightness. This is the core reason why the face of the single man often ages slower. It carries the light weight of curiosity, while the married man's face carries the crushing weight of duty. The weight of the species rests squarely on the shoulders of the married man, and that burden exacts a biological penalty that Schopenhauer calculated with unforgiving precision. We have only begun to dissect the consequences of this biological servitude. And if this detailed dissection of freedom and fate is reshaping how you view commitment and aging, then it is vital you share your perspective. We ask you to cement this realization by dropping a single phrase in the comments below. Let us know that you understand the depth of this toll. Use the phrase, "The cost of storage is too high." That specific phrase will identify you as one who grasps this deep philosophical truth. Do not miss the opportunity to join this community of deep thinkers. Subscribe now, because we will continue to unveil these brutal truths, ensuring you are equipped with the knowledge to navigate the game of life and power. You need to be prepared for what comes next, because in the final part of this series, we will examine the radical, unforgiving conclusion of Schopenhauer's argument, the ultimate reward for those who choose solitude, and the final destination for those who choose chains. The next insight demands your full attention. The relentless pressure cooker of human necessity, that is the core mechanism Schopenhauer sought to dismantle, finds its ultimate expression in the institution of marriage. We have meticulously tracked the obligations, the emotional taxes, and the structural compromises imposed upon the married man. Now, in this final, unforgiving analysis, we must confront the conclusion. The process of accelerated aging, the premature erosion of the spirit and the body, is merely the physical manifestation of a profound, internal resignation. It is the body signing off when the soul has ceased to strive for anything beyond maintenance. We are looking for the root cause of longevity, not merely physical endurance, but the longevity of intellectual vitality and personal sovereignty. The single man, maintaining his distance from the crushing gears of collective existence, protects the most valuable asset a man possesses, his time, and the unburdened integrity of his will. Before we unveil the final, devastating conclusion of Schopenhauer's analysis, I need to know, where is this radical philosophy finding you right now? Tell me the city that is witnessing this truth. The married man is perpetually subjected to the law of divided attention. His life becomes a complex ledger of obligations that must be constantly balanced. There is the economic will of the spouse, the developmental will of the children, the social will of the extended family, and the collective will of the community, all clamoring for a piece of his finite resources, most importantly, his time and his peace. This relentless external demand creates what Schopenhauer identifies as the greatest accelerant of existential decay, the impossibility of genuine solitude. Solitude is not merely the absence of people, it is the presence of self. It is the necessary condition for deep contemplation, for the unbiased perception of the world as representation, and for the engagement with the highest forms of truth. When the married man is denied this sanctuary, when every hour is potentially subject to interruption, requirement, or negotiation, his intellectual life necessarily shrinks. He trades the boundless universe of metaphysical inquiry for the finite, repetitive realm of domestic logistics. This intellectual starvation is what ages him. His capacity for philosophical growth, his ability to transcend the mundane, withers away, replaced by the stress of perpetual compromise. The difference in aging speed is therefore a difference in cognitive expenditure. The single man, reserving his intellectual resources, invests them entirely into self-cultivation. He preserves the elasticity of his mind by constantly engaging with challenging concepts. His mental landscape remains fluid, adaptable, and focused on the essential. The married man, conversely, must expend massive cognitive energy not on truth, but on managing illusions, managing expectations, managing appearances, managing emotional stability within the family unit. This constant emotional labor is exhausting, and it is a known biological catalyst for cellular stress. The single man is the ascetic philosopher. The married man is the perpetual diplomat in a domestic civil war. Consider the nature of suffering. Schopenhauer teaches that life is suffering, and that the only wise choice is to minimize the points of contact between our own will and the world's inevitable tragedy. Marriage, by its very design, multiplies those points exponentially. The single man suffers his own inevitable disappointments. He faces his own physical decline. The married man, however, must shoulder not only his own inherent suffering, but the aggregated misery of his wife and his offspring. Their illnesses are his despair. Their failures are his humiliation. Their financial insecurity is his crushing weight. Every external misfortune becomes a catastrophic internal event because his destiny is inextricably linked to theirs. This multiplication of vulnerability means the married man lives in a state of heightened background anxiety. He must constantly fear the unpredictable variables, the market crash that destroys the children's future, the unexpected illness that drains the savings, the social slight that wounds the wife's pride. This chronic stress, this existential dread stemming from outsourced vulnerability, accelerates his physical and mental entropy. The single man, through his courageous isolation, has performed a radical act of preventative medicine. He has refused to stake his spiritual preservation on the uncontrollable variables of external fate. He ages slower because he has less to lose, and therefore, less to fear. The great psychological toll of marriage is the gradual loss of personal dignity defined by self-ownership. The married man, particularly after the arrival of children, ceases to be an end unto himself. He transforms into a mere means, a resource for the continuation of the species, a financial utility, a structural support beam. His personal ambitions, the very flames that powered his youth and intellectual drive, are quietly extinguished, or at best, subordinated to the collective agenda. He is compelled by biological determinism and social expectation to perform a role that is inherently restrictive. This resignation to the status of a utility is the antithesis of the philosophical life. The single man maintains his status as the highest judge of his own actions, driven by internal necessity. He can still pursue the disinterested study of existence. When a man maintains his self-defined purpose, when his labor and thought are directed toward a goal he established alone, he retains a sense of timelessness. His existence is defined by his intellect, which is eternal, rather than by his biological function, which is strictly temporal. The married man's time is measured in milestones: birthdays, anniversaries, school payments, retirement projections. These are anchors that drag him relentlessly toward the grave, marking the stages of his functional obsolescence. The single man's time, conversely, is measured in insights, in completed works, in achieved solitude. It is a subjective time experienced as boundless possibility, precisely because it is unchained from the repetitive biological cycles of domestic maintenance. This subjective expansion of time is the essence of aging slower. It is the feeling of having lived a deeper, less expended existence. Furthermore, the married man is almost invariably dragged down into the realm of mediocrity. The demands of shared life often necessitate the simplification of conversation, the dilution of high culture, and the prioritization of social conformity. To maintain harmony, the sharp edges of genius must be blunted. The married man must talk about the trivialities of the day, the politics of the neighbors, and the constant requirements of material acquisition. This enforced superficiality acts like a slow, as intellectual poison. His mind, starved of high-level discourse and profound introspection, begins to atrophy. He becomes a man of the world rather than a man of the mind. The single man, shielded by his chosen detachment, can maintain rigorous intellectual standards. He selects his conversation partners based on merit, not relation. He dedicates his silence to the giants of philosophy. This intellectual rigor keeps the mind sharp, dynamic, and essentially youthful. Schopenhauer believed that the fear of solitude is the surest measure of a man's internal emptiness. The man who needs constant company to distract him from himself is already spiritually old. The single man, who thrives in his self-contained universe, proves his spirit is still burning bright. The acceleration of physical decay observed in the married man is not a mystical curse. It is the logical outcome of chronic psychological defeat. When a man constantly subordinates his own will, when he lives in perpetual fear of external loss, and when his intellectual faculties are devoted to the trivial, the body mirrors this internal surrender. The stress hormones flow ceaselessly, the focus on self-care diminishes, and the outward appearance inevitably reflects the internal exhaustion. The married man looks older because he is existentially older. His resources have been prematurely liquidated to pay the collective debt. The single man, by refusing the great biological compromise, preserves his energy, his resources, and his capacity for joy derived from pure intellect. He doesn't merely avoid the negative, he actively cultivates the positive. The profound peace found only in self-possession. This self-possession is the final, undeniable secret to his slowed decline. He maintains his integrity as an individual, escaping the inevitable fate of becoming a mere cog in the machine of propagation. He is the master of his own fate, defined by his ideas, not his obligations. We have traversed the depths of Schopenhauer's uncompromising truth, observing the profound consequences of a choice that shapes destiny and determines the speed of our decline. The man who chooses solitude chooses truth. Type "I choose the path of autonomy" below. This locks in your understanding of the essential power found in solitude. Now, ensure you are subscribed and hit the like button right now. This is how you signal to the universe that you value profound, unfiltered truth, keeping this crucial knowledge flowing directly to you and marking you as one of the few who demands genuine philosophical rigor. Next time, we dive into the hidden mechanisms that govern true social respect, revealing why your greatest perceived strength might be the exact reason people disregard you, and how to harness invisible leverage to control any room. You will not want to miss the unveiling of this absolute strategic essential.